the senior center. This is one of those stories that is, very difficult to stomach for a number of reasons, because it spans, a long time, an initial community rally with people fundraising and, really donating a lot of money so that there would be a senior center for residents here. And then it bleeds into COVID, which was a terrible time for everyone. And now, there's a lawsuit, a train wreck. So walk me back. Give me the story of the senior center.
Okay. So in 1975, Dr. House and his wife donated the property where the senior center is located right now. And they told the city, we'd donate this property, but you have to build a city hall within 15 years. And because the city hall then was in the really old library, which eventually became the museum. And it was very crowded. If you went to a council meeting or anything, you were literally standing up between bookshelves and other things. So Wayne Crosby, who owned the Orville Jackson drugstore, and a bunch of other citizens decided that that was inappropriate. So they started raising money to build a meeting place. And they worked for several years. They had fundraisers, raffles, barbecues, all kinds of things to raise money. So they formed a private nonprofit, and they raised $185,000. And so in 1988, they had raised that much money. So they went to the city and said, we want to build a senior center and a city hall on this property, and we've raised the money. We need about $40,000 more dollars. So several people signed a personal note to get that built. So our understanding and all the research we've done is that the city didn't have a penny of money in that land or the building, because the land was donated. When they built the building, 2/3 of the building was the senior center. 1/3 of the building was City Hall, because we had a part-time mayor, really small city staff. So as the city grew and the city entered into a contract with the Hawkins Company for them to build a city hall and the city to lease it, because the residents of Eagle wouldn't approve a bond for a city hall. So they did it legally, but they leased the building. So when that happened and the city moved out in 2006, then the senior center was turned over totally to the seniors. And to put
the building, the 1/3 that was City Hall became seniors.
The entire building became the senior center. And, to show you how that was planned out, there were 2 addresses, there were 2 utility meters. It was designed to be 2 separate buildings. And I've talked to several people who were involved in city politics back then, and their understanding was, because of the donation of the property, that the city put that in their name to hold it in trust for the seniors. Because in 2006, when the seniors took over, they totally remodeled the building themselves. They got donations. Home Depot and other people gave money. We've got photographs of the work being done, of older people doing the work and making that a senior center. So it was a great deal for the seniors. We paid $1 a year to lease the building, and then the city decided that they would keep the building up. They'd pay the maintenance and pay for janitorial services. So as a senior center and a private nonprofit that was formed in 1987, before the building was even finished, then it was a great deal for the seniors. They worked with the city. Several mayors had signed leases on the senior center, and we were going forward. No one would have ever thought that the city would pull something like this. But, they used a bunch of excuses. Well, first of all, they said, we got a 4-day notice that there was on the agenda regarding the senior center.
And what date was this?
It was
Or thereabouts?
February of 2023.
Okay, so February 2023, seniors are doing whatever seniors do, and all of a sudden they get a 4-day notice at the senior center.
Yeah, and it was worded something like whether to extend or not to extend the lease.
Okay.
So quite a few seniors went to that hearing and testified, and the city council, without more than a few minutes of discussion, voted unanimously to terminate the contract for the seniors without cause.
Okay. So this is where things get crazy to me, because I thank you for the background, but what would cause the city in February of 2023 to say, hey, we've had this senior center and the nonprofit organization since the 80s that have been dedicated to this area? What would cause them to say, hey, your lease is terminated, you're done?
Well, there are several theories, but one of the theories kind of goes back to expanding City Hall and having one campus, is that community room was going to be used for classes, but it didn't work out because it's in the middle of City Hall and it didn't work. So sure. Some people just feel like they wanted the building.
Okay, but how about this? Instead of theory, did the town council and the mayor give a reason for terminating the lease?
Yes, they said they're terminating the lease without cause, but then after that discussion and several more, the mayor says that the seniors were in financial trouble, and also that we were named in a tort claim because a gentleman who was riding a Valley Regional Transit bus that was driven by a senior center employee died because of an accident, and the senior center was being sued. So the city was going to step in because, quote, to help the seniors. And so they used that. They used two different excuses after they said they were terminating it for cause. One is that we had financial problems, and two is that we were being sued. Well, the city was being sued too. But once the attorney who looked into the case didn't go after the city and didn't go after the senior center, because Valley Regional Transit's contract with the senior center, the only thing the senior center did was interview drivers, get background checks on the drivers, turn those drivers over to Valley Regional Transit. They would do the training, and they would do follow-up training. They covered the insurance. The only thing the senior center did was hire the drivers and pay them, and then they were reimbursed by Valley Regional Transit. And Valley Regional Transit is part of the state retirement system, so they got drivers at lesser costs because the senior center didn't pay benefits. So that was the contract. The senior center, we didn't even have insurance on those buses. However, we bought.
But Valley Regional had insurance.
Valley Regional had
So it's
insurance.
not like there was this, liability floating around. It was done properly, but it wasn't. You weren't providing the insurance at the senior center.
Right. And as soon as the attorney that filed that tort claim got the contracts and read them, they were never going to come after the senior center, and they were never going to go after the city. But the city felt like, for some reason, they needed to protect the senior center, but they never talked about themselves being named in that tort claim either. So, and there were several meetings where the mayor and council members kept repeating that whole scenario. But if you back up a little bit, in February of 2022, right after Councilman Russell was elected, she started attending senior center board meetings and getting involved with the senior center. Brad Pike was the liaison to the senior center. And if anyone understands what a liaison is, it's just to meet with these organizations that you really don't have any control over or any oversight over, and
Yeah,
go
you
back.
form relationships. You're the familiar face. You're not in control of them, but you're the guy at City Hall who talks to them.
Right. So the seniors might, at a board meeting, might say, we're interested in this. They'd take it back to the city council, and they'd come back and forth. But Brad Pike was his liaison, but he told in a board meeting the seniors that Helen Russell was there to help everyone. So unfortunately, the president of the senior center at that time, without any approval of the board, gave Helen Russell access to things that she shouldn't have had access to. They got our bank accounts, they got our CD accounts, they got our federal tax ID numbers. They actually went out and hired their own an accounting firm for the seniors without the senior center board ever voting on it. There was just so much interference, and the president of the senior center back then would even ask Helen Russell to run a meeting for her when there were elected board members there. So it became very ugly. And during that time, when that was happening, a bunch of members of the senior center contacted me and said, would you come back and help us? Because back in 2015, the senior center was losing a lot of money, and I became president. We entered into new contracts and tightened up things, and made $20,000 the first year I was president. So I came back to get involved, and I got involved, and I ran for vice president of the senior center, and the president ran for re-election. Unfortunately, the night of the election, she passed away. So there was about a 6 weeks period where the vice president was in charge, but then I became president. So it was only 6 weeks after I became president that the city decided on Valentine's Day to terminate our contract. So there was a lot of involvement with the city, not only getting into the senior center's business, but they also got involved with Valley Regional Transit, and they were meeting with Valley Regional Transit about the senior center that they really had no ties with. But it just became a very ugly issue. And we at the senior center and our attorneys, we have a lot of information that we were able to get from Valley Regional Transit. But when we asked the city for correspondence between Helen Russell and VRT and the mayor and VRT, we got a letter back saying that it would cost us $2,700 and some odd dollars to get public information, and all we were asking for was correspondence. So the city had started putting up making it very difficult for citizens to get public information about what's going on. And so we didn't pay the $2,700. The court will get the information for us now. And we do have a court date on this whole business of kicking us out without any cause, and saying that we had financial problems. When they voted to terminate our lease, we had $130,000 in CDs and savings. So then you fast forward a few weeks, and there's another agenda item on the city council. It says a legal issue with the senior center. So I didn't go to the council meeting. I waited till the end of the council meeting, and I went down because I wanted to see what they come out of executive session with. So they went into executive session, and some of the staff went into executive session, and I was the only one there waiting. And then some staff members came out, and I was talking to them. I mean, I used to be their boss, and I said, so do you know how much longer they're going to be in the meeting? And the person said, well, I was in there for another reason. I wasn't in there for the senior center. Well, the only thing listed on the city council agenda for going into executive session was the senior center. So they were having also an illegal executive session over an issue that wasn't published and made public. But to make a long story short, they came out, made a motion for the mayor to direct the attorney to write a letter to the senior center. We still didn't know what it was. So it took about 6 weeks, but we finally got a letter that they were suing us for $100,000 because when we had, during the COVID, they had asked the seniors, I wasn't involved then, to do a presentation to the city council. And that's happened over the years, whether it was COVID or not. But they had COVID money. They asked an employee of the senior center to come in and make a presentation. The board member went, but the employee made the presentation. We were locked down. Our employees were on unemployment. We were trying to pay our bills, and we asked for money. We didn't ask for any particular dollar amount, but if you go back and look at that audio video tape, all the council members were in favor of supporting the senior center, and they voted to give the seniors $100,000, 4 payments, one payment each quarter of $25,000. So then they were invited to come back the second year. They came back the second year, and they voted to give the senior center $50,000. So the seniors accepted that money, and it helped us pay our bills, pay the utilities. We were running some buses, but it was a difficult time. We weren't serving meals. The place was locked up. And so they sued us for $100,000, saying that when we made the presentation to the city council and we gave them financial profit and loss statement, that we didn't make them aware that we had savings or any CDs. And, any CPA, and the judge in this case ruled last week from the bench. He said, before I became a judge and a lawyer and a judge, I passed the CPA exam and I practiced. And including your bank accounts and your assets on a profit and loss statement is inappropriate. So if the city didn't ask for this information, then you can't, I don't know what your basis is for saying you're suing them for this money. So they revised the first lawsuit because it was past the statute of limitations. Then they sued us for $100,000 again for the second time they gave us money, which was only $50,000. So the second time they changed their suit. They sued for the wrong amount of money, and then they sued us, refiled the claim the third time. Now they want $150,000 from the seniors. So they're just trying to break us. I mean, and they have a deep pocket attorney. We've hired attorneys, and our attorneys are doing a great job, and we think that we will prevail. And the things that they did after they evicted us, we had until a certain date to move out. And a few days before the move-out date, which is a whole nother story, but the city hired a locksmith company, sent them to the senior center to change the locks.
Before your lease was up?
Before our lease was up. So they changed the locks, so they locked us out. They also put hidden video cameras in the senior center, and they were filming us during that time. So they locked us out. They seized our equipment. They still have some of our equipment. They still have pianos. They have desks. They have a lot of sound equipment. They have tables. They have a pool table, things that were donated to the senior center. And the mayor's argument was, well, since the city owned the building, people probably thought they were donating those things to the city, so we're going to keep them. So they kept them, and they still have them. The piano, everything that was donated, and we have records of who donated those and why they donated them. So all of this stuff will come out in court, and I think the city, they violated constitutional rights, First Amendment rights, seizure, filming us. I mean, it was a really, really ugly situation.